He left her a note saying it was over, but what she was hiding could have saved everything. After the wedding and honeymoon, most couples settle into a quiet married life with their partners, just like Laura did. A loving wife, she had everything she could ever ask for: a loving husband, a job she loved, and a close-knit family. Unfortunately, she had no idea that things were going on behind her back, things worse than any nightmare Laura had ever endured. After finding a mysterious letter addressed to herself one day, Laura realized that she had been living a total lie. In fact, her happily ever after would not turn out so happy after all. However, even though the contents of the letter shattered her world, Laura would not let it bring her down. In fact, she would ultimately get the greatest revenge against her husband. Laura and Jack began dating after meeting in college, quickly falling madly in love with one another. At the beginning of their relationship, everything seemed perfect. Laura could not help but feel she had finally met the man of her dreams, the one she would spend forever with. Most importantly, she thought Jack felt the exact same way about her. The two lovebirds quickly developed a deep bond, and before anyone knew it, they were ready to take their relationship to the next level. They might have been young, but Laura and Jack did not waste any time starting a life together. For those close to them, Laura and Jack seemed like an unlikely couple right from the moment they began dating. They were just so different. However, in no time, Jack got down on one knee and proposed, with Laura immediately saying yes. Still, despite the ring, Laura's family remained unsold on the idea of Jack. According to her family, Jack lacked ambition, as he went from bartending job to bartending job, with no bigger aspirations. Laura, on the other hand, was driven from the start. While her parents worried he would coast along beside her, Laura had no reservations about her future husband. As Laura and Jack prepared to walk down the aisle, Laura's parents continued to worry about her well-being. In their gut, they knew there was something seriously wrong about Jack. Even worse, they could see that their daughter loved him immensely, so they could not say anything. However, there was something about Jack that they simply couldn't trust. Laura's parents knew how much love their daughter had to give, and they simply did not want her to give it to someone who did not deserve it. In the end, they decided to remain silent. Unfortunately, Jack would prove them right before long. Just like most little girls, Laura had always dreamed of the day she would walk down the aisle towards her Prince Charming. Now, that day had finally arrived. Just a few months after they started dating, Laura and Jack decided they would spend the rest of their journeys together. They even talked of starting their own family not long afterward. One beautiful morning, Laura and Jack tied the knot, surrounded by friends and family. After the wedding and honeymoon, the couple returned to their normal lives, now a married team. Even better, they seemed to adjust quite well to their new lives. However, Laura had no idea that her husband would soon show her his true colors. Now married, Laura and Jack began their new life together. So she moved all her stuff into Jack's small apartment. While it was not the nicest place, Laura believed they could be happy with the little they had. Still, the frequent bathroom leaks, old carpeting, and peeling paint did not make the transition to married life any easier. However, blinded by love, Laura continued to soldier on. Soon enough, she started sprucing up the apartment, making it a new home for their new life. Little did Laura know, one day, Jack would completely blindside her with a devastating, dark secret. As Jack continued to bounce around from bar to bar, Laura became the primary income provider at home. As such, money was always tight for the young couple. Even worse, despite Laura's parents being quite well off, they refused to help the couple out. You see, they thought that Jack would just squander the money. Things became so bad for the couple that Laura even started playing the lottery to hopefully win some money for her and Jack. As their financials continued to spiral out of control. Before Laura knew it, their situation started to have an impact on her and Jack's relationship. It seems like Laura and Jack enjoyed a happy life together for the first couple of years of their marriage. While their financial hardships could make things difficult, at least they loved and respected one another, and that was enough. Unfortunately, as the years passed, things became more and more difficult. 7 years into their marriage, Jack was still working bartending jobs. At the time, he often worked late nights, so Laura would sometimes swing by after work to say hello. However, as she continued to surprise her husband at work, she started to notice that something was off. You see, Jack's coworkers would sneak odd glances at her or whisper behind her back. While she had no idea what was going on, she knew that something wasn't right. Soon enough, a mysterious letter would reveal everything. 7 years passed, with the couple seemingly growing stronger every day. One morning started off entirely normal, with Jack kissing Laura goodbye and heading to work. Soon enough, Laura headed out the door herself, with no clue that her life would soon turn upside down. When she returned home, Laura headed into the kitchen, where she noticed something quite unusual sitting on the counter. It was a handwritten letter, addressed to her. What could be the contents of this mysterious letter? And how did it get inside her house? As you might imagine, Laura eagerly opened the message. As anyone would, Laura quickly opened the letter she found in her kitchen. Unfortunately, she would soon wish she never had. The letter instantly broke Laura's heart into 1,000 pieces. In the letter, Jack detailed a months-long affair he had been having with Laura's sister, Carla. Yes, that's right. Apparently, Jack had decided that he loved Laura's sister more and, even worse, he no longer wanted to be with her. Not only that, but he said it was in everyone's best interest for him to leave Laura and start a new life with her sister. After 7 years of marriage, Jack wrote, it was time to end theirs. However, Jack had no idea Laura had a secret of her own. Laura continued reading the letter through teary eyes. In it, Jack wrote down all the ways that she made him feel unimportant to her. For example, he claimed that Laura would never compliment him or notice small changes he had made in his appearance. However, in her mind, no reason could ever fully explain the affair. Not only that, but Jack also felt particularly angry that Laura did not seem to value anything he did for her. According to him, she never even thanked him for making dinner or doing the dishes. Unfortunately, Jack did not stop there. In his letter, he gave one final reason for not wanting to stay with Laura. Just the day before Jack wrote his letter to Laura, she had handed her boss her 2 weeks' notice. Since she gave no real reason for her quitting, Laura's boss had called her husband and told him all about it. So, Jack used Laura's resignation as one of the reasons he was leaving her, alongside his affair with her sister. However, Jack had no idea that Laura had actually quit her job as a part of a surprise she was planning for him. Laura's heart continued to break as she neared the end of the letter. Apparently, Jack had been thinking about leaving her for quite some time. Not only that, but it seemed like her sister, Carla, and Jack planned to marry. She couldn't believe that two of the people she loved the most could do something like this. The hurtful letter finished with Jack informing her that he wanted nothing to do with her or any type of contact from now on. After 6 years of marriage, Laura couldn't believe that this was the man she once thought she would spend her life with. However, as the saying goes, everything happens for a reason. And while Laura didn't know it yet, but this was the best thing that could ever happen to her. Jack said that he would not be staying in town. In fact, he said that he would be leaving as soon as possible with Laura's sister to West Virginia. Furthermore, Jack was ready for a fresh start, but unfortunately, Laura would not be a part of it. Unsurprisingly, Laura was utterly devastated by all the news. Jack continued to give more reasons to explain why they had grown apart in recent months. However, that did not change the fact that he turned to Laura's sister for comfort. After she finished reading the letter, Laura felt like she had been living a lie for the past few months. Worst of all, she blamed herself for not realizing something was amiss sooner. Now equipped with the truth, Laura knew that she had some big decisions to make. She could take time to mourn her life later, Laura thought. At that moment, she needed to attempt to overcome the situation and focus on taking care of herself. Everyone who has been in a long-term relationship knows that it is normal for every couple to experience ups and downs. More often than not, it takes a lot of work and effort to make a marriage last. Most importantly, both partners must civilly communicate their feelings to one another. However, Jack did quite the opposite. Instead, he decided to make a run for it while Laura was at work. Not only did he have an affair, but he had the nerves to have an affair with her sister. Fortunately, in the end, Laura saw his true colors, and she knew that even if it hurt for a while, she was better off without him. Plus, she had quite the surprise in store for Jack. Laura realized that her life would never be the same, all thanks to one little letter. In a matter of minutes, she went from having a supposedly loving husband to having no husband at all. However, that wasn't the worst part. Laura had also lost a sister. Now, as she went through this incredibly difficult separation, she would have one less person to count on. At that moment, Laura had to take a few deep breaths of air to stop herself from crying. However, as devastated as Laura was, she held on to a secret that would help her get over Jack forever. Just a few days before she had learned of her husband and sister, Laura had received some even more incredible news. However, this was good news. Great news, in fact. As such, Laura wanted to confirm the results before sharing the astonishing news. However, after reading the letter, it all of a sudden seemed like the perfect time to let Jack know about her $1,000,000 secret. Meanwhile, Jack had no clue that Laura had also been keeping something from him. But now that she knew about his betrayal, she no longer cared for him, or her sister for that matter. Soon enough, Jack and his new partner would regret ever hurting Laura. While Laura felt terrible about the news of her husband leaving her, she could see a silver lining. In fact, she even started laughing through her tears. You see, the real reason why Laura had handed in her 2 weeks' notice the day before was that she had recently become an incredibly wealthy woman. As an avid lottery player, Laura hoped that she would one day win big. And as fate would have it, she had. Yes, that's right, Laura had won the lottery just days before her husband revealed his affair with her sister. A $15 million jackpot, to be precise. In fact, she had been keeping it a secret from Jack, waiting for the right moment to spring the news. Now, he would lose out on the chance to ever share her winnings. Guess it was a bad time to drop such a bomb on Laura. Throughout the 7 years of her marriage, Laura always wanted to make Jack happy. Furthermore, she thought that maybe if they didn't have financial problems, their life would be so much easier. So, Laura started playing the lottery in hopes of turning their fortune around. Now, she had finally won the lottery, but she was all alone. Even worse, Laura had to throw out all the plans she had made in her head. Since Jack had been working such long hours, Laura thought a vacation would be nice. Now, she had to reconsider everything. Still, she couldn't feel too bad with her impressive lottery win. When she had won the lottery, Laura had wanted to surprise Jack in the most extraordinary way she could think of. So, she had already started planning a special getaway, a second honeymoon of sorts. Laura had even selected tropical Hawaii as the romantic destination she would whisk Jack off to. Now though, she had much bigger problems to deal with. After she received the letter, Laura knew that Jack would not be making that trip with her. For all she knew, she would never see him or speak to him again. That's when Laura started thinking it was time to move on. Maybe she would even take that trip herself. Alone with her thoughts and the devastating news of her husband and sister's affair, Laura sat down and thought about her life. In the end, she realized that this was a blessing in disguise. Furthermore, Laura was actually grateful that Jack decided to leave her. Now, not only could she enjoy her winnings, but she was free to enjoy them as a single woman. If Laura had told Jack that she had come into a lot of money, Jack would have never told her about his affair. Not only that, but he would have expected to have half of her money. Even worse, Jack might have given some to her sister. Since Jack clearly seemed unable to confront Laura face to face, she decided to do him the same kindness and pen a letter herself. However, before she started writing, Laura thought long and hard about what she wanted to say to Jack. After all, this could be one of the last, if not the final, interaction that they had. So, Laura realized that she needed to make every single word count. Just as he had to her, she listed all the reasons Jack was a terrible husband. She finished by calling his affair with her sister unconscionable. Laura believed that if he was so unhappy with her, he should just have left before having an affair. Laura had a response for each point that Jack had claimed made her a bad wife. First of all, Jack said that she didn't compliment him, because she simply couldn't compliment something that she didn't like to look at. Second of all, she commented on his cooking. As it turns out, all the items that her husband thought Laura liked were really all food her sister enjoyed. Laura also decided to finish the letter by revealing the real reason why she chose to watch TV instead of spending time with him. That's that all he ever did was complain and say negative things. Ouch. However, Laura wasn't done just yet. While Laura felt quite happy to learn that Jack would never touch a single dollar of her money, she wasn't quite done yet. In her letter back to her husband, Laura decided to let him in on a little family secret. You see, while Laura's sister's name was Carla, that was not always the case. Believe it or not, Carla had been born Carl. Yes, that's right. Carla used to be a man. Before she transitioned into a woman, Laura didn't have a sister, but she did have a brother. According to Laura, she just wanted Jack to know all the facts now that he had decided to run off with her. Now that Jack had revealed his secret, Laura felt it was time for her to reveal hers. In the very last paragraph of her letter, Laura detailed how she had won $15 million and had wanted to spend time with Jack to get to know him again. But that would never happen now. With that, Laura wished the new couple all the best, signed the letter, and sent it off. With that out of the way, Laura started doing everything in her power to make sure that Jack, and by default, her sister, would never see a penny of her money. While Laura didn't want her husband to see a single cent of her $15 million jackpot, she knew that could be tricky. You see, she knew that legally, Jack would be entitled to some of her winnings. However, Laura needed to find out just how much. Of course, that she had money to spare, she called up the best divorce lawyer in town. As soon as she sat down with her lawyer, Laura explained the circumstances and told him about the letter detailing Jack's affair. After listening carefully to all the details of the case, the lawyer was finally able to provide Laura with some happy and exciting news. As it turned out, Jack was actually not entitled to any of her winnings, due to his affair. Laura did not feel like staying in town to watch Jack's reaction to her becoming a millionaire, with him getting absolutely nothing. Furthermore, Laura knew that Jack would come knocking soon enough, trying to get what he believed he deserved. With the tickets to Hawaii already booked and paid for, she decided to go and enjoy a well-deserved vacation. So, Laura packed up everything she needed for a sunny vacation on the beach. Not only that, but she began to prepare herself to enjoy a life of freedom. After all, from now on, Laura could do pretty much whatever she wanted to. 7 years is a long time to share your life with someone. What's more, Laura didn't expect to be re-entering the dating world, and it certainly was something she wasn't looking forward to. However, now that she had had some time to think about it, she achieved some real clarity about her expectations of married life. Laura knows that her next partner needs to be someone who she can always be open and honest with. And even though her relationship with Jack had ended in flames and tears, it had also taught her quite a lot. While the truth hurts, it also sets you free. While this story did not start off very hopeful for Laura, she now has everything she needs to succeed. Today, Laura has now the funds to travel around the world, meet new people, start a new business, or even own a beautiful home. Most importantly, she learned a valuable lesson. With Jack no longer on the picture, she doesn't have to worry about looking after him, left alone making him happy. Luckily for Laura, that's now Carla's job. We sincerely hope that Laura is enjoying her new life of freedom and loving everything that it was to offer. Unfortunately, not everyone's lucky enough to win the lottery. Sometimes, someone needs to discover a different way to build themselves back up after a terrible breakup. Read on to discover the story of Charlotte Sapwell, who, after going through a bad divorce, found herself out of options. Unfortunately, like many single mothers, Charlotte Sapwell found herself in a challenging position. With little funds and debt from her past marriage, Sapwell and her 2 sons had no home and few options. They could either continue living in her parents' house or live on the streets. As you might imagine, the single mom did not like those options. So, she created a third option: construct her own tiny house on her limited income. However, the more Sapwell looked into her wonderful idea, she started realizing it might become more expensive than she planned. Still, she couldn't stop. Little by little, the single mom continued working on her tiny house. You'll never believe what she managed to build with her bare hands. Not that long ago, Charlotte Sapwell thought she had her dream life in front of her. She had 2 beautiful children and the support of her husband. Unfortunately, in the blink of an eye, her marriage crumbled, and she found things drastically changed. Sapwell was now a single mother. Even worse, because of her and her husband's financial straits, the courts ordered her former husband to pay very minimal child support.